Hello! Today I'm going to be talking about a figure from a vintage toy line, and the toy line is The Lone Ranger Rides Again.
Turn with us now to the exciting days of the old Wild West with these Lone Ranger sets. Will the wagon train be ambushed by renegade Indians? Will Butch Cavendish get away with the Carson City payroll? Will the Lone Ranger and Tonto arrive in time to save Danny, or is it too late? The Lone Ranger by Marx. How it ends is up to you.
This toy line is from the late 70s. I believe 1979 or 78 is when the first figures came out. For this video, what I want to be talking about is a Lone Ranger figure. So the Lone Ranger himself, I picked it up off eBay and he was in pretty bad shape. Alright, here we have the Lone Ranger himself and his original box. So you can see that he stands pretty well on his own still, and I don't really think that's an issue with these figures at all. Their boots do allow them to stand up quite well. Now you can see that this Ranger in particular is quite filthy, pretty grimy. He's got tears in the back of his pants. The hat doesn't look like it can be saved. I'm just guessing that this is mold or some other thing, and it looks like it's completely soaked into the hat. So I don't think I can get this looking the way it did before, and it feels like the rubber material is deteriorating. So I might just keep this, but I don't think I can do anything to make it look good as new, unfortunately. With the head, the mask was actually sort of stuck to his face when I first got him, and it took a bit of work to release the mask from his face. So there's a bit of marking. When I lift the mask, there's a bit of marking there to where the mask has stuck onto the face. But I really hope that I can remove that with a bit of cleaning. And there's also this stuff around the hair. I'm not sure if that's paint rubbing or if that's the material of the hat, leaving residue on the hair. So we'll find out when we clean him up. The face itself is also quite grubby, and there's this very thick layer of dirt. This figure did come with all of his original parts. So he's got his shirt, his pants, his boots, his belt here. The buckle has a bit of an issue that I can't really show you on camera, but it's snapped. But because it's a very flexible metal material, I just flexed it back into the right place and you can't really tell that it's snapped. And then he's got his holster belt and ammo belt, so there's ammunition sculpted into the back of his belt there. And this one is made of a flexible rubbery material. Seems to be in good shape. I don't think it's going to break or anything as long as I'm careful with it. And he's got his two pistols. So one pistol here and one pistol here. And he is shown on the box holding those dual pistols as well. So with the box, this is the original box that came with this figure, or rather that the figure came in. The seller put some bubble wrap inside to preserve the structure, but it's in really poor condition. So I am glad to have it though, but it is in pretty bad shape. So this bit is just missing here, and this bit's missing, this bit's missing. So I don't know what happened to this box, but when I look online, there are a lot of boxes that are in similar condition to this, so I guess it's not unusual that these did get damaged, and I'm just really glad to have one, really. So it says here on this side, it says the Lone Ranger fully jointed action figure complete with authentic fabric outfit, hat, mask, belt and buckle, neckerchief or neckerchief, two pistols, double holster set, boots, and Lone Ranger comic book. So he is missing the comic book, which I just realized now. It was supposed to come with this little booklet, and it doesn't. This one doesn't come with that, so that must have gotten lost along the way. But the figure itself does have the original parts, and that's what matters to me. It says here at the front, a fully jointed action figure, and then it says Marx Toys. So it's interesting that they used the term action figure, which was coined by Hasbro for G.I. Joe, as a way of marketing dolls to boys. So really, this is a doll, but they used the marketing term action figure, and I find that really interesting. This was in the 70s, so this was just a decade after G.I. Joe, so that makes sense. It says here, the Lone Ranger, the daring and resourceful masked rider of the plains. And at the bottom it says, with his faithful Indian companion Tonto and the great horse Silver, the Lone Ranger led the fight for law and order in the early West. Nowhere in the pages of history can one find a greater champion of justice. The Lone Ranger rides again. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all of his clothes off, and then I'm going to soak the clothes and the accessories in soapy water and hope that that does something at least. It might fade the blue of the outfit, but I might just take that risk just to get it clean, because it's so dirty that it's not in displayable condition, and I'm worried that the dirt is just contributing to deterioration, so I think it's better to clean it up and risk a little bit of fading. Yeah, the belt has some marks here. The belt has some discoloration here. I'm not sure if that's residue from something that was once stuck onto it, or if that's paint or something, but the kid who previously owned this figure obviously really loved playing with it, and I think that's quite charming. So let's just try to fix it up so it's in displayable condition, and hopefully try to save this figure. The Domino Mask, I might accidentally break it. It's quite flexible, but the elastic around it is actually the same rubbery plastic material, so it's not an actual elastic string, and so I feel very, very scared to touch it. Okay, that was fine. There, so you see on his face those markings there left by the Domino Mask from when it used to be stuck to his face, which was probably for several years. It's quite a handsome face, I'd say. It's a well-sculpted face. It's not supposed to resemble the actor from the TV series. These figures are supposed to be standalone figures, so it's just for the toy line, and I think it's a very well-sculpted face. And I spent some time. What I did was I had to remove the clothes, so the clothes were pretty filthy. I removed the clothes, I washed them, and I did a lot of sewing. So the pants were split at the back, and they were split at the front, and it had a few tears, a few big tears near in the back of the pant legs. So I had to stitch all of that together. I did it really badly, but for the most part, it does look fine now. I gave everything a good clean, so I cleaned up his face, the body, the accessories. I did try to save the hat, but it did look quite clean. This is the hat after I did some cleaning, but it is a bit misshapen, and there's a few bits sort of just chipped off, and I did find a replacement hat anyway. So I'm just going to use the replacement hat for now. This is my Lone Ranger now, after I did the cleaning and the restoration. It's nowhere near as filthy and old looking as it was when I first got him in the post. And this is just him posing with his two pistols there. You'll see that his clothes are still a nice blue color. I do have another Lone Ranger figure with the clothes completely intact with no tears, but that one has faded quite a bit. So I much prefer this blue color despite the tears. This is where I did the repair. Here and here is where I did the repair on this pant leg. And I didn't do the best job in terms of stitching. I'm not very patient with stitching, so I do big stitches. But I don't think it's much of an issue if you display him from the front. The problem that this figure had earlier was that his pants were tucked too far into his boots, and that caused this to pull down, and then somebody obviously tried to spread his legs like this, probably to ride the horse, and that tore the pants in the back, so that was the problem. I found it really difficult to pull the boots off because so much of the pants were actually tucked inside, so now the pants are just up to here, and I've just tucked a bit of it into the boots, and that should solve what the problem of this figure was in the first place. The belt, I did some cleaning on that as well. There was some weird paint on it. I'm not sure if that was paint or some food waste, but it came off quite easily with just some warm water. The face as well, I did do a lot of cleaning on the face. It did take a bit of magic eraser sponge to fully clean this up. Of course, I didn't go over the eyes. I didn't want to remove that, although supposedly magic eraser doesn't remove paint, but I just didn't want to take any chances, so I just did the flesh tone here. This string is still the original string, but I had to cut off the ends, so they were all loose and frayed. I just cut off those ends, and I'm just leaving this here for now. I might replace it if this comes apart too easily. The neckerchief, I didn't clean. I didn't think it needed much cleaning, so I just left it as is. I didn't want any colors to run if they didn't have to. Fortunately, with the shirt and the pants, the color didn't run. So yeah, that's good, because a lot of vintage fabrics, you'd have the color running if you tried washing them, and it would leave unsightly sort of dye pools or marks in the creases. But luckily in this case that didn't happen. This figure came with his original guns, these two revolvers here, and they're in pretty good shape considering how bad the condition of the actual figure was in. So you see there, it's still pretty shiny, and the paint is still intact, and it fits well in his two holsters there. The Domino Mask. The Domino Mask is pretty fragile, so it does feel pretty fragile, and I see a bit of what would I call it? What I call it cracking. There's a bit of it sort of breaking along these ends, and that has me really worried. So I just put this mask back on in a position that I feel looks right, and I might just leave it there indefinitely. I don't want to do too much taking off and putting on because I don't want this mask to break. And anyway, I have another Lone Ranger figure without the mask, and his face is a bit brighter, so that one would look better without a mask anyway, for some of the other outfits that I've got. I was pleasantly surprised, although I already heard people singing their praises for these figures. So they were made by Marx, Louis Marx, and Gabriel Toys. I'm not sure what the connection is between Gabriel and Marx. Yeah, I'm a bit confused about that myself. But they are quite well made. So as I said, I have a few other figures lying around, but I'm saving them for another video. But the articulation is pretty much on par with the G.I. Joes by Hasbro, which were introduced in the 60s. The outfits were really well made. The accessories are pretty detailed, so his belt here has these ammo things in the back. This belt here actually fastens. Mine did snap here at the bottom, but I was able to bend it back so that it didn't really matter that it snapped. And that was because when I first received the figure, the buckle was completely folded in, so it wasn't really functioning properly, and all I had to do was unfold it. But in the process of unfolding it, I unfortunately snapped the belt. But it still works quite well, and you don't really notice that snapping point. Yeah, the hat is soft rubbery material, and it fits well on his head. It sits there, and the face itself is a pretty good sculpt. The hair, the paint is still all there. I thought at first that some of it had rubbed away, but it was just residue from the old hat. So that's good that the paint is still intact. So overall, these figures seem to be pretty sturdy. When they do break, they're pretty difficult to repair, but if you find one intact, I don't think you're in danger of destroying one. It really takes me back to these old days of what they called authentically styled clothing and accessories for these toys, which are essentially dolls, but I really like those. I really like this type of toy. They don't really make these anymore, aside from, of course, from Barbie dolls and whatnot. But in terms of action figures, yeah, they don't really make them like they used to. Hey, thank you for watching that video. I'm really excited to do a separate video on the other figures and accessories that I've acquired. I might do several videos of those even because they're too many. The video might be too long if I try to do all of them in one sitting. But thanks for watching my restoration process for this Lone Ranger figure, and I'll be back with another video very soon. Bye. Thanks.